Well, there's a new Falcon and the Winter Soldier out, which means naturally we gotta talk about it. Before we do, I just want to address something. This show deals with a lot of racial topics, has a lot of racial undertones, and, I feel like for me personally, there's going to be things that might just slip out in the review that I might say that I don't want to seem disingenuous or seem like that I'm not respecting the situation or any type, or respecting racism or anything like that in general. I'm just a white guy from Missouri who likes to geek out about stuff, but I do really appreciate, and I do see and feel the undertones that are found within the show, and I'm glad that it's doing it in a good way. This show does a really good job of presenting things in such a way to where we see a certain situation that might not be, the truth, or really might not be exactly how it was presented or how something happened. And I appreciate how this show is doing that. But, I'm going to use phrases or I'm going to use terminology that the show uses, and I just hope it isn't taken, negatively in any way. I wanted to address that before we actually got into the show, because people on the internet can be crazy sometimes. So there's that. But without further ado, let's get into it. So, The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Episode 2. The episode pretty much just hits the ground running with the new Cap. The big cliffhanger with the last episode was like, who's this new Captain America? Who's this guy with Steve's shield? And we kind of learned, this new Captain America not only has abilities, but, he was a big shot. They had like a party for him, at his old high school, and he was this big shot, right? In his hometown, and, kind of focused on his background a little bit, trying to, kind of expose us to the character and make it to where we can kind of get to know him. So I thought that was kind of interesting. I want to dislike him really bad, just because, it looks so wrong. It looks so wrong to have him having Cap's shield, you know what I mean? And like be doing the things that Cap would be doing. And I hate that I actually kind of like him. Like they're making it really hard to dislike him because he just wants to do the right thing, He even says to Sam later on in the episode, he's like, I'm just trying to be the best Captain America, that I can be, or whatever. Sam and Buck, they're not having it. They don't really want to accept the fact that this new guy has the shield, and that is assuming the role. So naturally, after he gives this speech about being the new Captain America, kind of get a little bit of background about it, Bucky sees it on the TV, he goes to Sam, and then they, he's kind of like, how could you do this? Yada, yada, yada. Then he meets Sam. Sam's on his way to kind of learn about the Flag Smashers, and Buck's like, well, I'm coming with you. There's that funny scene where, like, Sam's like, oh, I have a plan. He just jumps out, and he has the wings. And then Bucky's like, okay. He just jumps out and just straight up just uses his arm as, just a way to break his fall. And it was kind of hilarious how Sam totally set him up for that. Because, after that, he's like, oh, I totally got that on camera, right? It was just kind of funny to me. But it's interesting kind of seeing their dynamic and how they work together. Like, they're familiar, and I don't know, it's kind of like The Odd Couple. You know what I mean? Like, it's kind of like what they've done, and I think they're even kind of poking fun at that later on in the episode, with the therapy and stuff like that. There's a total Odd Couple vibe, it weirdly works whenever it really shouldn't. Come to find out, the Flag Smashers basically have gotten their hands on a super soldier serum, and basically there's 8 super soldiers, kind of running around with the exact same abilities that, that Cap had and that Bucky has. I like that scene because, they totally set them up for that. The Flag Smashers totally sabotaged their idea, it's like they knew they were being tailed, or they knew that people would be after them. So they set it up in such a way to where it made sense, the Winter Soldier and the Falcon, like they come in and they try to do the Avengers thing, but they're not really synergizing, not really, a super duper good team. That's whenever fake Captain America shows up with, I believe his sidekick is the Fighting Star. And long story short, the super soldiers end up getting away. And, the new Captain America, he's kind of like trying to like say, hey, like, let's work together, let's do this, like, let's do this for real, like, we'll be stronger together if we can work together than, trying to go our separate ways. And, naturally, Bucky's not having it, and neither is Sam. You can tell there's a moment whenever Sam really wants to buy into it, but then, the new Captain America, he's like, I want to do this with Cap's wingmen. not kind of like designating like less respect for the abilities that Falcon and, Bucky have respectively. And Sam just straight up tells him, he's like, it's always the last line, that messes everything up, or however he says it. So, they're pretty much at odds. They're at odds from that point forward. Then Bucky kind of lets on about somebody that Sam should meet. So, takes him to this neighborhood, and he like, Sam has an interaction with a couple of little kids, and, the little kid's like, oh, look, it's the Black Falcon. And he's like, oh, it's just Falcon, and the kid's like, no, my daddy told me it was Black Falcon. And the guy's, Sam's like, is it because I'm black? And he goes, I mean, I guess it makes sense. And then, Sam makes a joke. He's like, I guess I can just call you Black Kid, and they have like a funny back and forth, and I'm not sure if that was it was funny, but I guess that's them trying to say like, hey, this is a predominantly black area, that we're finding our characters in this portion of the episode. I think that was a good way to, just kind of let us know, especially with what happens later. So, they go and knock on the door, and Bucky's like, oh, I want to talk to Isaiah. And, a younger guy answers the door. He's like, oh, no, no one lives here, and then Bucky says, tell him the guy from the bar in Goyang or something like that, let him know that guy is here, yeah, he'll know what that means. And naturally, that's like the code phrase to get in there. Come to find out that Isaiah basically was sent in as a soldier back in the 50s to deal with the Winter Soldier, and there was a black super soldier, very much in the same fashion as Captain America, being used to do similar things, but he was left in the dark. And Bucky tries to tell him that he's not a murderer anymore, and that he's changed and all this other stuff, but Isaiah isn't having it. He takes like a can of sardines and like throws it at the wall, and like it just straight up sticks in the wall. I was like, holy crap, like that is freaking awesome. And it makes sense. It makes sense that there would be more super soldiers, other than Steve, because that's such a rich resource to have at your disposal, and it would make total sense that they would have more super soldiers kind of with boots on the ground. It makes me wonder who else is out there that we don't know about. I'm just going to say it, like, if he would have fought Buck, I thought that would have been amazing, because it doesn't really matter. Like, I think it would have been, it would have been an intense fight, I think, for sure. And I think, the bigger issue is, and Sam brings this up, he's like, the bigger issue isn't just why was there another super soldier left in the dark, because Bucky said that he knew about it. He had known about this other super soldier, but didn't want to, tell Steve or tell anyone else because of all the stuff that he had been through. Isaiah had talked about after he, served his time in the army or whatever, he got, he was in prison for 30 years being experimented on and, having tests done on him and his blood drawn. And he's like, your people, after they were done with me, yada, yada, yada. And, I think there's a definitive like racial line being drawn, because even later in the episode, because I was thinking at first, I was like, what are they trying to say here? And later on in the episode, Bucky's like, oh, he said my people, he means Hydra. And then Sam looks at him and says, no, man, that's not what he actually meant, implying exactly what we're thinking as the audience. But I think the bigger issue is not only why was this super soldier left in the dark and no one knew about it, but why was a black super soldier left in the dark and nobody knew about it? You're telling me there was a black super soldier that nobody knew about. The tone that they're kind of setting up from the previous episode, not only about patriotism, but about racism in general, it is kind of sad, that we as the audience are surprised, to see another super soldier. But I like how the show does pointedly make it clear to us that this should be making us feel bad. This should be upsetting. This should be something that everyone should know about. There's no reason that this man should have been left in the dark, and there's no reason that he should have been there's no reason he should have had to live in prison for the amount of time he did being experimented on. Then, while they're arguing, these cops show up and they're like, talking to Bucky directly, and they're like, are you okay? Like, are you fine? And Bucky's like, dude, we're just talking, like, we're fine. And they don't even recognize who Sam is, and after a little bit of obviously trying to kind of push the subject of like, this is a white guy and this is a black guy, sir, Mr. White Guy, are you okay? Making that clear to us as the audience. Finally, one of the cops, he like walks up to him and he's like, oh, hey, these guys are Avengers, right? And then the cop realizes like, oh, sorry, Mr. Wilson, right? Yada, 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 super awkward. And then it's like a perfect storm, because then at that point, find out Bucky totally missed his, his therapy session, like what we saw in the first episode. It's court mandated. So it doesn't matter that he could just tear these guys to shreds. You can see it on his face. He's just like, this is so stupid, he's having to restrain. It doesn't matter that he's an Avenger. The rules still apply to him. And I like that they make it they make it known to us, it's like these guys follow the same set of rules that other citizens have to follow. And it doesn't matter that they're literally the ones that are responsible for helping put everything back to normal. Then, around that exact same time is whenever they kind of get together to basically Sam follows them back to, the station or whatever. And they're having to do like a group therapy session with his therapist, which I thought was kind of weird, but it makes sense, kind of setting up like, you may not like me, but you're going to work with me type thing. And I don't know, it was fine for what it was. They tried to get some quippy humor. But as they leave, there's the fake Captain America waiting for them. And he's basically like, hey, last chance, are we going to team up or not? And whenever they say no, yet again, the fake Cap's pretty much like, okay, well, stay out of my way. You know what I mean? Can we talk about for a second that he totally just shot a guy, too? Like, he totally shot someone. Very un-Captain America-like, just saying. He's got, like, some scruff going on, He's not, like... You can tell this is dollar store Captain America. I don't know. It's kind of interesting. We got more Flag Smasher stuff, kind of learning more about these super soldiers and kind of learning... I mean, there's still quite a bit of mystery. It turns out the things that they were, stealing in that semi-scene was actually medicine. I think they were referring to the girl as Robin Hood, she was, like, stealing medicine to help. And they keep using this term called the blip, before the blip. Or, they're trying to restore things to the way they were before the blip. Basically implying that, society cared more about the people that came back after Thanos' snap versus people who had been there the entire time. And I don't know, I think that's kind of an interesting idea to kind of play with. All in all, I feel like this was a really good episode, and they left us with a little stinger, the bad guy from Civil War. The bad guy from Civil War who had kind of dealt with the Sokovia stuff and kind of knew, about the Winter Soldier and the stuff that had happened with Stark's parents. And basically, they need to know. The big question with Sam and Buck is like, okay, well, we need to figure out kind of how this super serum got passed around, like who is responsible for it, who might have been responsible for it. And I like how they kind of like left it with like as like kind of like a Hannibal Lecter-esque callback, and they just had like a few frames of, it's just enough to give us like, oh, that's the dude from Civil War, the bad guy who had the vendetta against the Avengers, and that's where obviously we're going to be going next week. There's a lot that happened in this episode, and like I said, I hope I didn't say anything that like was offensive to anyone or anything like that. It's just, I'm just trying to recap the show as I see it, and it just so happens that what I am seeing deals heavily with race. And to me, it is sad, though. It is sad that we even have to have this in the media, and it's sad that there even has to be, something like this for us to watch. But I think it just goes to show also that this is the kind of stuff that happens, and this is how we as people view these things happening. Whenever it may not entirely be the case every single time, or even most of the time, it may not be the case. It's just a really hard topic. It's a hard thing to tackle. So, I'm interested to see where the show takes it, and I'm interested to see what changes in the show, what topics they continue to tackle. So if you sat through the whole thing or listened to this whole thing, I really, really appreciate it. I would love to know what you thought of the video. So make sure you, hit the subscribe button, make sure you hit the like button, the bell, you'll be notified every single time. I think I'm going to do these every single week, as long as I feel comfortable talking about, each episode as they come out. And I'll be looking forward to giving my thoughts more in the future on whatever. So, but before I go, I want you to check this out.